Interesting that Quigley said that, though, that they were often mistaken, this Council on Foreign Relations, for being Marxist or communist. And really, when you look at them, the two of them, there's not a bit of difference, really, except they're run by another group above them, you see. But as I say, they prefer socialism or communism because it really has a heavy hand over the public and makes it the proper kind of society, as they'd like to say themselves, where you're watched and supervised and given the right thoughts and right ideas and the right things to worship, which is generally the state and that kind of stuff. And some of them call it positive freedom, and other ones call it negative freedom. Negative freedom is where you give you a kind of 1970s America with lots of movies about people going back and forward in the desert in big cars and not much happens and things like that. And so you're well entertained, but you don't really know what's going on. You're kept out of any kind of loop, and the media just fosters that too. Positive freedom comes in when you have a common cause, a purpose. And they give purposes like, we'll have to spread communism across the world, or we've got to go and fight the Nazis, or fight the Japanese, or fight somebody. Now it's fighting the Middle East, of course. And that's positive freedom, get them all on board together. A war scenario, in other words. Always with a vague down the road utopia that will materialize one day, and you're working to help those who are yet to come. That's the idea of it. But they use all of these techniques. And it's interesting, too, that Karl Marx talked about basically a united Europe and a united Americas as well, and also one for the Pacific Rim region, which also the Council on Foreign Relations set up back in the 1920s. For the issue for Pacific Relations was one of their fronts, and another couple of them, all working towards one day building China up to be the manufacturer of the world. Of course, they created the World Trade Organization to do it. And we pumped our cash in to make it so. And then, of course, the eventual amalgamation under a singular system for the Far East as well. So they're doing it, they're rushing ahead with NAFTA, and for the Americas, they're still pushing ahead with that as well. And each prime minister and president takes different turns going down and signing the deals. They used to all do it together, but until a lot of the ones who were watching them caught on to that. Now they keep it quiet. They just go for tours in Latin America and sign the different charters and treaties. But in Europe, of course, those who followed Europe, and this is the sad thing about today too, we're not really a creature that's built to look across the whole world and feel part of anything way out yonder. It's like looking into outer space and believing you belong to Mars or something. You're only involved with the things around you, which can either help or hurt you, and that's your immediate area. And therefore we become kind of localized in our thoughts and thinking. If you notice, the media gives us nothing but foreign media now and foreign wars to train you that it's all part of one global system. And they get you awful frustrated about them, except there's nothing you can do about it, you see. Which makes it further frustrates you. There's nothing you can do. You know it's nothing to do with the reasons they give you for all these wars. We know it's plunder and everything else. And personally, I get awfully sick at the media going along with lies and then exposing the lies, then go back to the lies again. They did that with the weapons of mass destruction. Then it leaked out. It was just a phrase dreamed up by Madison Avenue that they were told to set up for the president and the rest of them to speak out about, and then exposed that, and then they were using it back the following day. That's how fast they change. It's like the head of the Council on Foreign Relations, Mr. Haas, admitting that they didn't go into the Middle East to help anybody getting killed by their governments at all. They used it as an excuse. But the next day in the main news, it was back to the same thing. Oh, we went over there to help the poor people getting killed by their governments. It's all farce, and unfortunately they churn out a lot of farce for us to believe in and confuse us too. Getting back to the amalgamation deals too, as I say, Karl Marx talked about unification of Europe, and that's really what has been set up. It's a super Soviet type system with an awful lot of rich millionaires and billionaires running the whole show at the top. And at the top, you don't even know who's running it because they won't tell you. It's secret. They still call it democratic though, because the politicians that supposedly represent different countries now, which are now called states or provinces, the politicians can yap a lot and grandstand on television and laugh at each other, and etc. But they can't actually pass any bill themselves or even put any bills forward, never mind annul them. So it's a dictatorship of a sort. But here you have the same Marxist idea. A former General Chancellor Gerhard Schroeder on Sunday called for the creation of a United States of Europe. I heard this last year. He says it every year, saying the bloc needed a common government to avoid future economic crisis, cause a problem and come out with a solution. This is what they do. So Schroeder, a social democrat who ran the country from 1998 to 2005, said in an interview with Der Spiegel that European Union leaders were wrong to expect the euro to drive the bloc on its own. So in other words, you see, the euro was introduced to further amalgamate them under a central government system, a central banking system. And they created the Bank of Europe, the Central Bank of Europe. But it's not doing all of its job. So he says the current crisis makes it relentlessly clear that we cannot have a common currency zone without a common fiscal, economic and social policy. You understand, that's everything. Fiscal, economic and social policy, Schroeder said. He added, we will have to give up national sovereignty like they haven't already. From the European Commission, we should make a government which would be supervised by the European Parliament, and that means the United States of Europe. Schroeder, who nurtured a close relationship with France during his leadership, welcomed an initiative launched by German Chancellor Angela Merkel and French President Nicolas Sarkozy to move towards a fiscal union in 2012. The proposal, which would mean giving up sovereignty over budgetary policies with the aim to shore up the 17-nation currency union, has received a lukewarm response from other Eurozone countries. But this is all just step by step with an old script they probably pulled out, blew the dust off, because it's time you put it in, you see. And that's how the world is really run. It's not spur of the moment decisions. It's got a definite goal, always had a definite goal, and it was admitted eventually in the 90s when they took the secrecy of the European amalgamation after they got all the countries into it. They said in their initial charter they'd have to lie to the public because they'd never go for losing their national sovereignty. So they lied from 1948 right up until the late 90s. And they're still lying today, of course. Germany and France have sent a long signal with the plan for a European economic government if it is meant seriously and receives suitable authority, such as European Finance Minister, Schroeder said. So they want a European Finance Minister. This is the correct way forward and the precondition for the correct funding, which are Euro bonds, he said. Germany, which enjoys lower costs for issuing debt than its single currency partners, has led resistance to joint Euro-dominated bonds. So it's all I do with cash too, as these psychopaths march on in their big psychopathic club at the top, knowing exactly where it's all going. And you're not supposed to know. You're supposed to think that it's, pulling at straws as they go down and drown at the last minute. Well, we'll better amalgamate completely and give up all sovereignty. You have to go back and read the setup of the International Monetary Fund, the Bank for International Settlements. That's the banking group, this private banking group under the United Nations, which the Royal Institute for International Affairs, CFR, set up. And you'll find out this was planned a long time ago. Maynard Keynes wrote about it. This true purpose of these particular banks was to unite the globe eventually. And the International Monetary Fund was basically its big stick as well, to keep all the countries in line, and eventually it would come up to Part 2, the Bretton Woods Part 2 agreement, where they created the new system for the whole planet, and the IMF would do all the bookkeeping. There'd be no localized, in other words, national bookkeeping left. It'd be open for the IMF, who would do all your books. It's pretty well there today. So we're going into this global system, not a nice, pretty, happy, multicultural utopia. It's nothing to do with it. It's just the peasants of each country is just the same as the peasant of any other country in the eyes of the inbred top elite psychopaths that run it all.